The US Open, the fourth and final Grand Slam of the year, and an absolute must-watch or must-visit for the American tennis fan, especially the New Yorker, who can see the best tennis players in the world compete at the highest level in their own backyard. Yet, despite being a tennis fan and playing in his youth, one of us hasn't been to the Open in person yet.
Yeah, that's me, Justin Orfanella of I Snap You Right, and I've never been to the US Open.
Well, now is as good a time as any. We're going to the qualification tournament, or qualies, which is held the week before the main tournament. It's where all of the players who are just barely ranked under the cutoff for a guaranteed spot in the main tournament fight to get one of the final 16 spots in each draw. The US Open used to try to keep qualies a secret, probably because admission has been, and is still, free. You had to know when it was being held, and they wouldn't fully open the shops and restaurants on the grounds either. But over time, more and more people attended qualies, so much so that the US Open realized that they actually had an untapped revenue stream on their hands that they needed to capitalize on. Now, there is so much going on during what is now called Fan Week, featured player practices, charity events, and even musical performances from local groups. Well, now that we're here, why don't we just get straight into it and see a match right away?
Sounds good, let's go.
You know we're not going to be recording any video during the match, right?
Nope, but we're going to be taking photos. Lots and lots of photos.
So, your first live professional tennis match, what did you think?
Way better than watching it on TV, that's for sure.
Well, sounds good. You know what? Sitting out in the hot sun for almost 2 hours made me really hungry, so why don't we get something to eat?
Yes, please.
The Food Village is the main food court here on the grounds. It features 14 stalls serving both regional and international cuisine, from your standard hamburgers and hot dogs to Korean barbecue and gyros. It used to be that the stalls were mostly in-house brands like Fulton Seafood and Baseline Cocktails. Nowadays, only Prime Burger and Franks and Fries remain from this earlier era, with the rest being contracted to outside vendors. But with so many options, what would Justin and I get to eat? Alright, so what did you get?
Carnegie Deli, pastrami.
Yeah, I had to, right? I got it too, except I had to go with the signature waffle fries. Can never get enough of those.
Fair enough.
It's been a long time since we were able to get a Carnegie Deli sandwich. Both of us went to the actual restaurant the day before it closed back in 2016, freezing our toes off in the rain with two of our friends for a chance to experience their legendary sandwiches. Nowadays, the only way to get their famous pastrami or corned beef sandwiches outside of catering is to go to Madison Square Garden or the US Open. So for the two of us, this was a moment years in the making. So how did you like it?
Awful lot, couldn't finish it, but it was good. $30 a sandwich is pretty steep though.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that it's the US Open, they're gonna jack the prices up a bit, but a bit much. Hey everyone, Julian from the future here. So I actually have a menu from the restaurant from 2016. The pastrami sandwiches we got at the Open would have cost $20 there. Adjusted for inflation, that's $26.20. If you add a couple of dollars as a US Open premium, the price increase is actually not that unreasonable. It's just that it was an expensive sandwich to begin with. Our wallets are empty, but our tummies are full, and I think we need to walk this off. So why don't we go on a whirlwind tour of the grounds?
Works for me.
When going on a tour of the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, what better place to start than at Arthur Ashe Stadium, the largest tennis stadium in the world. Arthur Ashe Stadium is the center court here at the US Open. It was opened in 1997 and is the largest tennis stadium in the world, being able to hold 23,771 spectators. It's named after Arthur Ashe, who was the first black man to win the US Open, and the first person ever to win the men's tournament in the Open era, which is when the Grand Slams were opened up to professional players and no longer restricted to amateurs. It was originally built without a roof, but after 5 straight years of rain delaying the tournament, one was finally added when construction techniques advanced sufficiently enough to account for the difficult soil conditions around the stadium. It allows for play during rain, gives shade to players and spectators especially during hot days, and makes the stadium feel more compact and not too big for tennis anymore. We're now in front of Louis Armstrong Stadium, the number 2 court here at the US Open. This building, which opened in 2018, is the second largest court on the grounds and holds 14,053 spectators. It's actually the second building to bear the name. The original Louis Armstrong Stadium was built as the Singer Bowl for the 1964 World's Fair. In the 1970s, the US Open was looking to move from the West Side Tennis Club in Forest Hills, which is actually not too far away from here. The president of the USTA saw the Singer Bowl from an airplane and thought, "That's perfect." So they took over the building, renamed it after the famous trumpeter and singer Louis Armstrong, and split it into 2 stadia. The main court on the left side, which would be the primary show court until Arthur Ashe Stadium was built, and the smaller grandstand, which filled out the right side of the building and was very unique. We'll cover the grandstand later in the tour. By the 2010s, the old building was starting to show its age. With only a single cramped concourse at ground level, pedestrian circulation was highly inadequate, and the stadium lacked modern amenities that fans had come to expect. So the old stadium was given a grand send-off. Here's a short video of one of the performances at the closing ceremony. And a new, larger building with 2 tiers, a fast-opening roof, and modern amenities was built in its place. It's an improvement that was sorely needed. But it's not without its flaws. Namely, that the players are easily distracted by pedestrian movement on the concourses behind the baselines, and the louvers that are supposed to keep rain out and let air in tend to do the opposite. On hot days, the circulation inside is so bad that it feels like you're sitting in a bowl of pea soup. And on very rainy days, rain can actually come in sideways through the louvers and into the stadium even when the roof is closed, as the USTA unfortunately found out as the remnants of Hurricane Ida passed overhead in 2021. So the entire grounds were renovated about a decade ago, and one of the best things to come out of that renovation were these new galleries and stands that were put up behind the baseline of many of the courts. This is the one overlooking the practice courts, where the pros work on their game on off days and warm up on match days. You used to have to crowd around a chain link fence and peer through a nearly opaque screen just to try and get a glimpse of Roger Federer or Serena Williams. Not anymore. Now inside the grandstand, the new grandstand, which opened in 2016 replacing the old grandstand. You'll notice that unlike the stadiums we've been to so far, this one is a bowl shape, and it's very lopsided, which serves 2 purposes. 1, it provides shade in the afternoon, and 2, the old grandstand had an overhang on one side where spectators from Louis Armstrong Stadium could watch matches on the grandstand from up high. The lopsidedness is meant to mimic that overhang. The new court is very nice and modern, but it lacks some of the things that made the old grandstand so magical. When the Singer Bowl was renovated for tennis use, Louis Armstrong Stadium was heavily modified for use as the center court, while the grandstand was largely left in its original configuration. This meant that it was very tight and cramped. Spectators were basically on top of the players, so a crowded grandstand was very loud and raucous. the overhang, which could only be accessed by the upper levels of Louis Armstrong Stadium, allowed even more people to crush their way in, and also reflected noise from the crowd, making it even louder. The bowl shape of the new grandstand simply lacks the closeness and intimacy that made the old one so special. To their credit, the USTA did take notice, so when they designed the new Louis Armstrong Stadium, they made the out area of the court as small as possible and made the seating sections as steep as possible to try and recapture that magic. Finally, we're here at Court 17, or Stadium 17 as they call it now. It opened in 2011 and permanent stands were built here in 2012. This used to be the forgotten corner of the USTA until someone had the genius idea to plop a show court down here. Court 17 tends to get matches between more evenly ranked competitors than the bigger show courts, which makes for a better atmosphere. So, what did you think of your day today?
Well,
Stop. I know you're going to write a reflection piece later, which you're going to put up on isnappyright.wordpress.com, and then I'm going to voice over it and create another video so we can double up on the content from this one trip.
Yeah.
But I have something to say, so here, take this. Like I said, the grounds of the National Tennis Center underwent a revival starting with the construction of Stadium 17 and ending with the opening of the new Louis Armstrong Stadium. It brought a lot of very needed things. Modern stadiums, expanded capacities for the field courts with the new galleries, and straighter and wider pathways and walkways for better spectator flow. It used to be that most courts had no TV cameras, and some didn't even have a sound system for fans and players to hear the umpire. Now, every court is broadcast capable with a modern sound system, and they even all have automated line calling. But in my opinion, in the midst of all of these upgrades, the NTC has lost a bit of its charm. Before the renovation, the NTC in the Arthur Ashe Stadium era had a certain aesthetic to it. Lots of brick, blue-painted steel, bushes and plants everywhere that provided shade and some oxygen and visual relief. The renovation eliminated all of that. The brick facades and blue paint were replaced by gray plastic and metal, and the trees and shrubs were replaced by stalls for merchandise and upgraded experiences. It didn't have to be this way. The decision to go with gray as the main color of the NTC was a choice, not a requirement. They could have done the entire renovation in a manner that added all of the new amenities, yet still maintained consistency with the Arthur Ashe aesthetic. But someone decided that everything had to be gray, even redoing the interior facade of Stadium 17 to match, and we've wound up with a National Tennis Center that is, in my opinion, drab and dull rather than colorful and visually diverse. But I'm not the president of the USTA, so I'm just going to have to deal with it. And if I'm being honest, given a choice between the NTC that I grew up with and the one that exists now, I'd choose the current one every time. Better organization, no more confusing twists and turns, more space in general. In the limited square footage the NTC has to work with, function precedes form, and the NTC is much better for it.
That's going to be it from us today. We had a pretty good time out here. I'm glad I was able to come out. Like and subscribe if you feel like it. That really helps us out, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, Julian from the future again. At this point, I had a little bit of an outburst that was undisciplined, unrestrained, and uncouth. So let me explain what I was trying to say in a slightly more controlled manner. If you're around New York while the US Open is going on, you really should try and get out to Flushing Meadows to experience it. Of course, most people are going to want to see the best in the world, and that involves buying a ticket to the main tournament, which is absolutely totally worth it. But if you just want to have the US Open experience and watch good, skilled, competitive tennis without breaking the bank too much, then Fan Week really is worth your attention. The players who play in qualies might not be the absolute best in the world, but they could still wipe the floor with most regular people. They're all about even in terms of skill, which guarantees that the matches will be competitive. You might also be able to see a veteran player trying to work their way back after some time off, or you could see the next Carlos Alcaraz or Iga Swiatek before most of the rest of the world finds out who they are. The grounds are now fully open. Even Arthur Ashe Stadium, which used to be off limits until Arthur Ashe Kids Day, now hosts player practices that are open to attendees and pre-tournament charity events that feature famous current and former players. And ESPN now covers quali matches on TV and will actually expand their coverage of Fan Week in a few years, something that was unthinkable even 5 years ago. Ever since the US Open decided to stop keeping qualification week as the worst kept secret in all of tennis, they've done an excellent job marketing it, adding things to do, and upgrading the experience. They have transformed it from a simple pre-tournament tournament into the third week of the Open, an event all on its own. And with free admission, Fan Week is absolutely worth going to every year.